All right, everyone, buckle up because today we are diving deep into those early reviews for Starfield's Shattered Space DLC. I've been reading through them all, and let me tell you, there's a lot to unpack.
Oh, yeah. The hype is definitely real, and the community response. Well, let's just say opinions are all over the place. It's wild. We've got people calling it the best thing since Skyrim and others saying, really? That's how much they're asking.
And that is the question, isn't it? Is Shattered Space worth your time, and more importantly, is it worth 30 bucks? Because let's be real, that price tag has caused some controversy.
Yeah, it's about $3 an hour for most people.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing everyone seems to agree on, it's the biggest change they made. Ditching those huge, procedurally generated planets for one handcrafted world. And the people who are loving it are saying it is absolutely stunning.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Because those huge planets, while cool in theory, ended up feeling kind of samey after a while. I don't know about you, but I felt like I was spending more time looking at loading screens than I was exploring.
Totally. And this switch to a handcrafted world, it feels like Bethesda's response to all that criticism.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off for sure, going for quality over quantity. But if you're someone who really values those detail-rich open worlds, this could be exactly what you've been waiting for.
I see what you mean, but let's be real. Is this handcrafted world enough to justify that price? Even if it's amazing, 10 hours isn't that much.
I think you have to look at it like this. How much do you like Starfield's core gameplay loop?
Yeah.
If you're already hooked on the exploring, the crafting, the combat, then Shattered Space is more of that, just like the ultimate
Okay, I can see that. It's like they took everything they learned from the main game and crammed it all into one concentrated package. That's a
Exactly.
tempting way to put it, I have
Yeah.
to admit. So what about the story? What are we actually doing in this handcrafted world?
Get ready for some cosmic horror. You're on Varun Kai, which is the home world of that mysterious House Varun.
Oh yeah, those are the space wizards, right? From the main game. Always creeped me out a little bit.
Yep. And it turns out they were doing some experimenting with warp technology, basically space magic, and accidentally broke reality.
Whoops. Talk about a bad trip. So are we cleaning up their mess?
Basically. It's even worse than that. Shattered Space has brand new alien enemies. The Vortex Phantoms and Vortex Horrors,
Yeah.
and they are creepy.
Finally. One of my biggest issues with Starfield was it felt like every planet you landed on, it was just another group of guys with laser rifles. Don't get me wrong, I love a good space fight as much as the next person, but it would be nice to have a little more variety, you know? So these new alien enemies? Tell me more. What makes them so scary?
Oh, one reviewer said they were terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, actually scary. Apparently, there are parts where you're trapped in these really tight spaces with these things, and the sound design,
Ah.
oh man, they went all out. You've got distorted screams, weird whispers, the whole bit.
Okay, now that's how you make a game memorable, right? Not just more shooting, but something that actually gets under your skin.
It's like they really leaned into the whole psychological horror thing, and from what I'm reading, they nailed it.
So we've got creepy aliens, scary space magic. What else is this DLC packing?
Well, the setting itself is really interesting. Remember how in the main game it felt like the story was always kind of black and white? Good guys, bad guys.
Yeah, it was kind of simple in that way.
Right. Well, Shattered Space really dives into all the drama going on within House Varun. They're not just this evil force. They're a whole faction with different groups, different beliefs, all clashing with each other.
But that's interesting. So it's not as simple as just shoot the bad guy.
Nope. You've got some really tough choices to make in this DLC, and the reviewers are saying those choices have real consequences.
Okay, now that's what I like to hear. I'm all about player choice, especially if it leads to different endings.
One reviewer mentioned this one choice they had to make between these two different Varun factions. They both had reasons for what they were doing, but they were totally at odds in their choice. You actually determined which side came out on top in the end, leading to a totally different ending than they were expecting.
Wow, okay, so Bethesda actually put some thought into this. Huh. It's not just a throwaway side story.
Not at all. It sounds like they really wanted to give players some agency in this one. Let them shape how the story plays out.
All right, you've got my attention. This is starting to sound less like a cash grab and more like something that adds something real to the Starfield universe. But come on, not everyone is happy, right? What are the downsides? There's got to be something.
Well, no, DLC is perfect, right? And even Shattered Space has its criticisms. The big one. That 10-hour playtime we talked about earlier, even with all the added detail, the branching stories, it seems like some people felt like it ended too soon.
The age-old problem of too much too soon. I've been there. It's tough when you're really invested in a world and then bam, it's over.
Exactly. And a few reviewers specifically mention the main antagonist.
What about them? Don't leave me hanging.
It sounds like they were interesting on paper, but they just didn't quite stick the landing. Like their motivations were hinted at, but never really explored.
So we get it, they're evil, but we don't get the why.
Pretty much. And on top of that, the writing itself seems to be a bit divisive.
Really? Some people love the writing in Starfield, others not so much.
Yeah, and it sounds like Shattered Space is more of the same. Some reviewers were praising the dialogue, saying it's sharp and funny, very Bethesda. But others, they called it a little flat, even generic.
Oh no, don't say that. Starfield had its moments with the writing, but it definitely could have been better.
It sounds like Shattered Space has the same issue. Like the main characters are fine, but the side characters are kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah, that's a tough one to balance, especially in a DLC where you've got a limited amount of time to tell a story. You don't want to waste time with boring exposition, but you also don't want your characters to feel like cardboard cutouts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Shattered Space kind of struggles to find that balance at times.
So the writing is a mixed bag, huh? Well, let's talk about something that should be a little less subjective. How does it run? Because even the most beautiful handcrafted world is gonna fall flat if the frame rate is chugging along.
Yeah, about that. Even with all the patches they've released, some reviewers are still having issues. Frame rate drops mostly. Some glitches here and there. It seems to be especially bad on the Series X.
Oh man, that's rough. Especially since that's supposed to be like the optimal way to play Starfield. Have they said anything about fixing those problems?
Not officially, but it's all over the forum, so I'm sure they're working on it. Knowing Bethesda, it's only a matter of time.
Here's hoping. So performance issues aside, it sounds like Shattered Space is shaping up to be a pretty solid DLC.
It's definitely got potential,
Yeah,
especially if you're really into the whole lore and atmosphere of Starfield.
for sure. But what about the loot? Did they add any fun new toys for us to play with?
They did. They did. They've got a bunch of new weapons and armor, all with that cool House Varun style. The problem is the reception has been kind of mixed.
Uh-oh. How mixed? Are we talking good ideas poorly executed, or like they brought back the cursed hats mixed?
Nothing quite that bad,
Mm.
thankfully. But remember that whole legendary system they have for gear?
You mean the one where the stats are basically random? Yeah, that was a bit of a pain.
Right. And it sounds like it's the same deal in Shattered Space. A lot of reviewers were saying that unless you get really, really lucky with those random rolls, the new gear is actually worse than what you already have from the base game.
So basically, it's a gamble. You might get a cool new gun, or you might get stuck with something that's objectively worse than what you were already using.
Pretty much.
It makes you wonder about the whole loot system in Starfield, doesn't it? Like, that was a common complaint about the base game, and it seems like they haven't really addressed it here either. So where does that leave us? It sounds like Shattered Space is a bit of a mixed bag. It's gorgeous. It dives deep into the lore, and it's got some genuinely creepy moments. But it's also expensive, it's got some technical issues, and the loot system is still kind of a letdown.
It all comes down to how much you love Starfield.
Hmm.
If you're dying for more, even with the flaws, then go for it. But if you're hoping for a huge overhaul, something that fixes all the problems of the base game, you might want to wait for a sale.
That's a good way to put it. I think Shattered Space is a perfect example of your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
But hey, no matter what you think of the DLC itself, it's definitely got people talking. And who knows, maybe this is a sign of things to come. What if Bethesda is using this DLC to test the waters, seeing how people respond to a more handcrafted focused experience?
Interesting. Maybe this is a glimpse into the future of Elder Scrolls 6. Only time will tell.
Now that is a question for the ages. I guess we'll all have to wait and see. That is going to do it for this deep dive, though. Thanks for sticking with us as we ventured into the Shattered Space. Keep those browsers locked, and we'll catch you in the next one.